they tend to look at comic books as like not real entertainment, small entertainment versus, the big artistic world where you go to the movies to see the action, but it's not so much like, oh, I could pick it up in this, like pick it up in a dime novel or something. That's not real entertainment.
For a long time, the answer would have been very clear. Would have been, comic books are not art. Comic books are a juvenile, ephemeral form of mass culture that deserves to be mulched and recycled as something better.
I mean, there's all sorts of interesting aspects about comics. You can have the social commentary stuff. You can really push the envelope, with stuff like Kirkman with The Walking Dead, where it's like, oh my God, that woman and her baby just got shot to death. Like, what? But really kind of talking about the human condition.
I read Kick-Ass. Walking Dead, Preacher is my favorite. And actually I started with The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. And I would read those when I was a kid, because I loved Indiana Jones, and that sort of got me into comics. And I would always go to my mom's basement, and they were old, so I would always have that smell of the old comics, and I'd just go like...
When I was a kid, these were for kids, and when I went to college, I don't think I looked at them the entire time I was in college. It would have been really strange to bring your comic books to college. Everyone would have seen it as like bringing your teddy bear.
Can I see what you got? Well, yeah, like there's some of my stuff that's not really age appropriate that he likes to get into. Like I have Johnny the Homicidal Maniac that I got from where I used to work. And he found it, and he loves, because the artwork is great, but some of it's kind of like, so I kind of got to like, he looked at it and I was like, okay, cool, and then I went and hit it.
We stereotypically think of comic shops as kind of a dark, scary place, and kind of poorly run. I mean, that's kind of the stereotype, and there's kind of the scary guy behind the counter that doesn't want to talk to you.
It's valuable, huh?
Ooh, your powers of deduction are exceptional. I simply can't allow you to waste them here when there are so many crimes going unsolved at this very moment. Go, go, for the good of the city.
And that's going to hurt the industry. If the industry really wants to do all these movies and become mainstream, they have to change.
There's something in a comic book store for everybody. I used to steal comic books from my cousins and my brother, and I would always beg my grandma to buy me comic books. She'd always come back with like Archie or Wonder Woman, and I was like, that's not what I wanted.
There have been a couple comic shops where I go in and get glared at by the guy who owns it because he's like, what the hell are you doing in my comic book shop? And that's frustrating, although it's kind of fun to actually go there and buy a bunch of comics and be able to say, actually, yeah, I read this, I like the same comics you do.
I can't say I've ever experienced anything negative about being a girl that likes comics, because usually whenever somebody finds out that I like comics, they're like, cool, and it's something that you can connect with usually.
Many cinematic conventions can be translated into comic books, but it really is a translation.
Make a good comic movie is really just keep it realistic and keep it in a world that we would believe, and that's why the Batman relaunch works so well, because they're like, oh, it explains how he gets all these things made, instead of some guy being like, you need me to build you a Batmobile? Are you Batman? No, I'm not Batman. I'm not Batman. Just build this car for me in this black Batmobile. Looks like the Batmobile. No, I'm not. No,
sure?
Not Batman. No.
Because you're about the same height.
I'm not Batman.
Okay.
If you're uncomfortable. Mr. Wayne, if you don't want to tell me exactly what you're doing when I'm asked, I don't have to lie. But don't think of me as an idiot.
But the truth is, the growth area has been high school and college. That's the biggest growth areas, and that's been through the movies. If people are seeing Sin City, 300, they're seeing things that they don't know at first are comics, Road to Perdition, or History of Violence. People go, oh, that was a comic? I had no idea.
When they just tell a good story, when they're not trying to treat it, it's just ordinary people in extraordinary situations, and that's really what any good story is. And so that's what I think the appeal for a lot of comic book writers when they take the genre as just a way to tell another story, but they coat it with just some, it's like a candy coating. So it's like, oh, this is a really deep story about a personal issue for me, and then
but I'm serving it to you with superheroes, and it's like you don't know what you're eating.
Mark Twain wrote about this very well in Life on a Mississippi. He said when people walk into an art museum, they see a painting on the wall, and they stand in front of it weeping tears of sorrow because they know the story. He said if they didn't know the story, they would look at it and they wouldn't be moved at all. The picture itself is not what does it. It's the associations it brings to mind.
We are in the golden age of comic books as far as like the best writers, the best artists, awareness of the book, and then just general acceptance of the material too.
I think we need to hesitate before we say, oh yeah, well, superheroes, it's just garbage. I have to ask you a question. Is Homer's Iliad mass culture? What we think of as the foundation of classical literature, Homer, Virgil, the Greek poets, they all wrote about gods and heroes.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web in his eyes, catches thieves just like flies. Look at